Buonasera, buonasera a tutti. Grazie di essere qua in questo orario un po' inusuale, nel senso di solito i nostri appuntamenti del mercoledì sono alle 18:30, però è vero che la specialità e l'importanza del nostro ospite, sorry, I'm speaking in Italian, but I know that you can understand it. La specialità del nostro ospite ci richiedeva di spostare l'orario dell'inside. È vero anche che è un inside fuori dal programma, nel senso che non lo avevamo scritto nella nostra locandina perché non sapevamo quando sarebbe successo. Abbiamo JR che parla di JR oggi, cioè la grande mostra dei Placé è stata affrontata da tanti esperti, da tanti punti di vista, da filosofi, scrittori, giornalisti. Il tema dell'immigrazione è stato raccontato con tanti punti di vista diversi. In realtà oggi abbiamo l'artista che ci racconta non soltanto la mostra, ma tutto il suo lavoro, quindi è un momento di ricchezza assoluto. Tutto questo arriva dopo il firmacopie che c'è stato al bookshop. Lo spirito di JR in realtà è per Gallerie d'Italia la linfa, cioè l'idea di poter dare una committenza, avere un grande tema, affrontarlo attraverso l'immagine, ma non soltanto attraverso la fotografia, per noi è sicuramente una forma di privilegio. Detto questo, io vorrei ringraziare JR e lascerei a lui la parola. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Allora, is English okay? Because there's so much, subtlety that I'd love to say, and I'm afraid that I'll, constantly stop if I do it in Italian. But how many people here don't speak English at all? Quante persone qui non parla inglese? Ah, va bene. Solo una. No, okay. No. So she can translate for you maybe. Or if not, I do a whole conference just for you after. So let's go to the first image, and what I want to show you here is the journey of a couple of stories, so it's not all the projects, but it's how one project led to another. And I did that photo when I was 18 years old. And to be honest, at that time, I had just found a camera in the subway. I didn't have a big plan of, like doing photography or being an artist. I haven't stepped into museum or galleries, so I had no plan, really. And I took that photo of my friend, and then I pasted it on the building of the project outside Paris. Now, what happened is that the mayor sued me for, pasting illegally on the buildings. But also what happened is that the riots, I don't know if you remember in 2005, there were some major riots in France that went all over the neighborhood. They actually started in front of that photo. The two kids that died being chased by the police in 2005 actually died right in front of this photo. So my work suddenly become the background of the largest riots we had since the French Revolution. And so I was on the cover of New York Times, not for my work, but because I was the background of those riots. And so this is the context of which my work is born. And I guess me as an artist in the middle of that violence and the riots. And so I guess I had to construct myself and create in the continuity of that. And so my next project was very quickly, I went to the Middle East in Israel and Palestine. And when I went there, it was the first time that I did a project, outside of France. I haven't traveled much at the time. And so I pasted photos of Israeli and Palestinian doing the same job. So, here's two taxi drivers, two students, two teachers, and I pasted them on Israeli cities and Palestinian cities, both together. But the people could not recognize who is who. They could not recognize which one was the Israeli taxi driver or the Palestinian taxi driver. And so that project, people told me, we allow you to do it on this side, but they will never let you do it on the other side. And when I was on the other side, people would tell me the exact same thing. We let you do it here, but they'll never let you do it on the other side. And I realized the power of documenting, actually. the documentation of it, the videos of how it was made, actually had even more impact than the work itself, because then people saw how people were reacting to it. Those were the three religious. And even when the nuns came and they recognized the priest, they started pasting him. I think, I was 20 or 21. It was, for me, the first time I realized the power that art can have. Then I went to Brazil. This was 2008. And for a project that took me a couple years, it's called Women Are Heroes. And I realized in communities like this, women are the pillars of their community, but the men are the one that, hold the walls somehow. And so when you see that, you realize that even if the women are the first victims of the violence, of the conflict, I wanted to highlight them, but I wanted the men to help to do it. And so that was the first time that I actually pasted eyes, because a lot of the houses, if you see, they're horizontal. So we had to crop the image, and then I decided to actually focus on the eyes, which I'm sure you would have done the same thing. And so that was really, for me, the beginning of walking within a community, staying in the same location for so long, and creating a project. And 15 years later, I'm still in that community. We have a school now, and we continued, so I'm going there once or twice a year. And so I know some of the kids that I met there when they were 7 years old, and now they're 20-something. So it's amazing also to see the impact of art and how art can have an impact. I started realizing that, along that project. This was the stair that takes you all the way up to the favela, and actually this woman, we pasted her on the stair, but it was my first anamorph, which means that it was the first time that I used and distorted an image to change the perspective we have on a location, and suddenly those stairs look like a giant wall. This was in Kenya. I continued that project there, and I was very, intrigued by how art could be in movement also. And I started with graffiti, so, I was, of course, trained was a big part of being able to have your name travel, and you paste or you tag on a train, and it will travel and will carry your name somewhere else. So for this project in Kibera, which is one of the largest slums in West Africa, we pasted the photos of the women, but just the bottom of the faces, and the people didn't understand why, there was half of the faces missing. And then when the train arrived, it connected with the faces. But the truth is, the train never stopped. It kept on going very slowly, and it connected slowly with each of the faces. And at that time, I also realized that if you're there and you're walking back with your grocery and you don't look back of the artwork that's happening behind you, you'll never see it. And that's fine. When you do an artwork in public space, you accept that some people will get curious, and you accept that some will totally miss it. It's not like walking into a museum where I know that as you walk in, I have all your attention. And I've always walked with within that context, that it's ephemeral, it might not last, and that the rain might take it away, but that also some people might just not care. And I never sign my work, if you see. So either you recognize and you might know who did it, or you don't, and it doesn't matter. It's about the people that I'm enlarging. It's not about writing my name on it. But if you look for the information, you can find it on internet. But if you don't look, then it will just remain eyes that were suddenly floating on a train. I started using different structure. And this was in Brazil during the Olympics. And I realized, okay, I don't need to necessarily paste in some places to use the landscape, to suddenly have an image live within a context. And that opened me many doors. This was 2000, I forgot, maybe 15 or 14 or 16 during the Olympics. But it was really a moment where I was like, okay, now let me re-scan the world. And there might be places that I thought I couldn't do anything that now are possible. And each of the steps, and that's why I'm going very quickly, so those through those different techniques. Until then, I'll take you deeper into some of them. Were a big step for me of like how to use photography, how to engage people. And this is a small museum we have in Paris, so I just thought I'd bring it here. If you never heard of it, I'm trying to do French promotion. It's called the Louvre, and they invited me to do a project on the pyramid. The thing is, you know, normally you exhibit there when you die, you know. It's not really a museum that have many living artists in it. They have a few, but not that many. So when they offered me the pyramid, I had no idea, because I never thought of an idea for the pyramid, just because, you know, it's not something you even dream of. And so I went and observed how people come and see the pyramid. They walk, and when they arrive in front of the pyramid, they turn their back to it, and they take a selfie. And if you look, everybody does that. They turn their back to the actual monument that they come to see, to photograph themselves in front of it. So I made it disappear, so that there'll be no more pyramid, by pasting the building behind it on it. But I never thought that they would re-invited me to do another project 3 years later. So this time I said, well, if I made it disappear, maybe I could make it appear. And so the second time, we actually pasted with 400 people a day, the whole, like if we had dig under the ground and revealed the pyramid. And you see the size of one person here on the bottom left. This is all paper. And the more people would walk on it, and the more it will disappear. And this was the idea for a week to create. The artwork was actually making the piece, was actually getting people together to do it. And that's, to me, is the DNA of my work, is the actual process. Because while people were pasting there, it's almost like it was irrelevant to them what they were pasting. They were enjoying the process of doing something together with people that they have never met, with people that they would have never met. And I feel it's almost like a mission in my work, in a moment where social media is disconnecting us so much, and yet we feel more connected, to actually find a way and find tricks, and image is a great trick, to bring people together. This is another small monument we have in Paris, the Eiffel Tower. This was actually right after the lockdown, and I was able to install this, and actually the day we installed it, they reopened Paris, you know, 2 days after. So it was one of the sites you could go and see. So it was some special memory. And this is here actually in Florence at Palazzo Strozzi. And during, you know, the lockdown, this idea of revealing what's inside the museum. We call it La Scarita, and the scar, and we opened the museum. Did it with Lorenzo from my Gallerie Continua, who's here, and it was a pretty special project. And then after that, in Rome, they invited us to do it again on Palazzo Farnese. And this one they kept longer, actually. They just removed it a couple weeks ago. So my technique is very simple. It's strips of paper next to each other, okay? And you can see it here because the printer was not working well, so you can actually see the strips of paper. And I like that. I think that's, to me, it's a way to reveal the process, and to do a pasting like that. This one was the image of a person from Azerbaijan in New York, who's a migrant, but who's in the shadow of the city. And by pasting him on the floor, everybody walked on him, but no one saw him. And then when I photographed him from above, then everyone else disappeared, and he appeared. And he was the cover of New York Times a couple years ago. And in my work, it's about scale. When you were there walking on it, eating an ice cream, you couldn't see him. He was too big. So people were just continuing, not even realizing that the pavement changed of color. But from above, it took a whole different perspective. So my work is all about perspective, you know. Even the pyramid the Great Pyramid in Egypt could suddenly float for a moment. It's about illusion, but the truth is, you know, when you see my work, that we really went and did it. And that's very important, and I'll tell you why. This was during lockdown. You know, there was a moment you couldn't do anything, so the only piece I did really at the heart of COVID was this sidewalk. and the streets were all empty, and I went one morning and pasted this. So let me give you the process of how an artwork works, because often people ask me, but how does it start? Usually it starts because people come to me and constantly tell me, hey, do you know they built a wall? Or do you know there's a wall between this country and that country? Do you know there's a place? Do you know there's a subject? It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I'm going to work on, but I pay a lot of attention to those signs that comes to me. And sometimes it takes me a year to touch a project, and sometimes it happens, very quickly. It really depends. There's no rule. This is the wall between US and Mexico. The photo is taken from the US. The other side is Mexico. For years, I have been thinking of doing something there. But as you see, the wall is see-through. You can actually, it's like a fence. You can, so I can't paste on it. So for all that time, I was like, well, what could I do? I cannot paste on this wall. And then when I started working with scaffolding, I was like, oh, maybe now I should go back and look at it. Maybe I could do something that I didn't thought of before. So I went there literally with a couple of friends, and we drove. And I was looking for a place that if I was doing an artwork, that you could see it from either side, that you actually could drive on. And a lot of the wall is in the middle of nowhere. There's not even a road. So I scouted on Google Earth like you could do it first, and look at where the border was passing, where the road was passing. And I found this place called Tecate. It's not far from Tijuana. It's like an hour in when you take from the ocean line. And I started, there's a place you can cross, with the border patrol and everything. You can actually enter in Mexico from here or go back. And I look at this part over here. And I saw that house on top. And I was like, oh, that house is pretty close from the wall. Let me go talk to those people and see maybe if I could do something on the house. And when I arrived, there was a woman there, and there was a child, and there was the grandparents sitting in the back, and there was some dogs and chickens, and there's a whole life happening there. So I couldn't really enter the gate, and I waved, and then she came to me, and she said, yes, how can I help you? I said, well, I'm an artist, and I was looking maybe to do a project here. And she said, oh, are you JR? And I go, okay, well, how do you know me? She said, no, I think I follow you on social media. I was like, oh, that's strange. Are you sure? Because she said, yeah, I'm pretty sure you do those black and white things. I said, yeah, I'm actually looking if I could do something on your back wall. She said, of course, come in, come in. She takes me on her back wall, and the truth is the wall was not, there was not enough visibility. It was a bit far. It looks close from the wall, but it was a bit far. So I say, thank you so much. I just got here. I'm going to keep driving all the way to the coast. And she said, of course, don't hesitate if you need anything. And as I walk out, I say bye to the grandparents. I say bye to the baby that was in the crib. I say bye to the dogs and the chicken. And then I keep going. And then we drove all the way to Tijuana. But on the way, the wall became two walls. And so it becomes harder and harder. The more you drive to the ocean, it becomes harder to do anything. And so I'm like, well, you know what? It might actually have been better where we were. So let's drive back. And then on the way, I'm like, wait. That whole time, when we went to see this woman, there was this baby on his crib, his little baby bed. And I was like, what is this baby who looks at the wall every day because he can see it? At 1 year old, he looked like 1 year or 2 years old. What does he think of? So we went back and ring. And I said to the woman, hey, I'm sorry, I have a question for you. Yes, did you forget something? I said, no, can I take a photo of your baby in the crib? Don't move him. She said, sure, take a photo. And the baby just looked at me. He had the two hands on the crib like that. And I just took a couple photos, some with my phone, some with my camera. And then I said, look, if something comes up, I'll come back to you and we'll, maybe I'll propose an idea or something. She said, of course, here's my number. And then I look in front here, there's all the houses, but there's a hole here. And no one really could tell me who owns this hole, So I went to every neighbor, and I said, I'm sorry, but do you know whose land is this? And they say, no, I have no idea. I go to the next one. I say, I'm sorry, you know whose land it is? They say, I don't care. I go to the next one. Nobody had an answer. So in this case, if nobody tells me it's theirs, I say it would be a good idea to maybe go to the rental shop, rent a caterpillar, and start digging. So I rented a caterpillar, which basically you can all do, you know. You can, every one of you can go and rent a caterpillar, and they'll deliver it to wherever you want. So I say, can you deliver it to this place? And I started digging. And as I dig there was a helicopter passing, border patrol. This is one of the major points of crossing, you know. So there is a lot of police on the other side. This is Mexico, the other side is US. And also I looked online, and I couldn't tell exactly where is the actual delimitation of the wall. Because you see, the wall is there, it's physical, we can see it. But in order for the border patrol or the army to enter Mexico without having to have a permit, the actual line is a bit further. So this way, when they cross the wall, they don't need to ask Mexico. And so the actual wall is in US, it's not in Mexico. And so I couldn't tell where the line was, so I just started digging, hoping that at some point someone will come and tell me, hey, you can't do that here. But no one came. We did this for 20 days, 25 days, digging every day to level the ground. And then I was like, okay, so maybe now it's the time to rent a scaffolding. So I went to a scaffolding company, and I say, can you build me a scaffolding there? And, you know, even if tomorrow I would ask them to build me a scaffolding in front of this museum, if I pay the company, they assume I have the permit. So the next day, they started building a scaffolding with no permits at all. And then those guys started building and building until it was 3 times the size of the wall. And of course, helicopters would pass by, and of course, border patrol. But they were observing, but no one was saying anything. And all the neighbors were like hiding behind curtain, and no one was, you know, involving themselves. So I was like, okay, I'll take the risk. So we put those wooden panel, and then of course I had talked to the mother of the child, and then I said, can I use the photo of your son? And she said, yes. His name is Kikito. He's 1.5 years, and you know, if his voice, his face can help in sharing a powerful message, please use him. And so we pasted him. And we pasted him and then started cutting him out. And then at that moment, I decided to cross the border again and go on the other side, back in US. And this is what you could see from the US side. And as you see, it looks like he's looking over the wall. Now, the border patrol were already there looking at him. But the thing is, when I crossed the wall, I removed my hat and glasses so they don't recognize me. And then when I passed it, then I put it again. And this is why I still wear hat and glasses, because it helped me staying anonymous and navigating through those places. And then for me, I thought that the walk would be, that's it, you know. I rented the scaffolding for a month, and then I went back home and I posted, hey guys, I just did this walk. You can come and see it. Here's a location point. You can drive there, and you know, anyone can take this road. So people started to come, and it was all over the media, and so people said, oh, let's go take a selfie. And people went and take photos from one side, from the other side. What I didn't realize is that people started talking to each other through the wall, which means that they would meet someone on the other side that is doing also a photo, and then would say, hey, do you mind if I pass you my phone and you take a photo of me? And then I take your phone and I take a photo of you. And that's what started happening and happening. And in my head, I was like, well, normally that's where you get arrested, because you could be passing drugs or you could be doing something illegal. And so I was afraid that at some point the walk could be taken for something, you know, negative, and that it would create those kind of encounter. But then after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, no one was arrested. But I know the Border Patrol are all over here, so I'm like, what are they doing? Why are they not arresting people? That means that they let them, that they see it and they let it happen. So I say, let me do a final image for the end of the walk. You know how when you do an exhibition, normally you do an opening, and you do a closing, and sometimes you do a dinner. I was like, let me do a lunch where I would gather people. And that was, you know, on this side, because there was not the wall, people took a piece of wood so that he looks above. And this piece of wood became famous. And so we pasted a big table on the Mexican side. Now, the thing is, we built that actual table. We really built it on the Mexican side with the eye of a dreamer. A dreamer in the US is someone who came illegally, but when they were really little, under 4 or 5 years old, with their parents. So technically, their parents are illegal, but they should be kind of legal. And there's a whole, you know, they were about to pass a law against Dreamer, so they would have to send back those people that all they know was the US because they grew up there. And during Trump, it was a big issue. And that was the moment where we were doing this. But the thing is, on the other side, we received a letter that said that if we try to build a table on the other side, they would arrest us and deport anyone who's illegal, because we would be obstructing the road where the Border Patrol need to pass. So I didn't build a table on the other side. But I made a call on social media and I say, hey, if you want to come and see Kikito, the child, for the last time, you should come. This is the last day. So people started coming, and when people were there, I passed them a tarp, you know, like a fabric, of the other side of the aisle. And when there was enough people to hold it, we sent a drone, and this is what you see. And what you see here is actually a table. Grazie. And what you see here is a table where half of the people are eating in Mexico and the other half are eating in the US. We have on the top here a music band. Half of the music band was in Mexico. The other half of the same music band was in the US, but they were playing the same music. Then we had a little taco stand on the Mexican side, and we would pass illegal tacos to the US so they could eat too. And then we sat, and I'm like, okay, we're going to get arrested very quick, so let's all sit, and let's all eat very quick, so this way at least we have a photo. So we were like, let's pass me water, pass me salt. Everybody was like, fast, fast. But then after 10 minutes, after 15, 20, 30 minutes, nobody came. Then it starts to be a bit strange. I'm like, where are they? I mean, it's weird. Why are they not coming? Because normally you have a border patrol car every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, you know, they pass by constantly, there's helicopters. So the silence was a bit weird. And after a while, maybe after 50 minutes or an hour, a border patrol came in. And at that time, I was in Mexico, so I said, tell him to come to me, you know, he can't get me anyway. So the guy came to me, and when he arrived, I say, sir,
oh my God.
you know,
You.
do you want to have tea with me?
You share tea with me? Yeah, sure.
And he said yes. And we shared tea at that moment, and he accepted that we film, and he came by himself. And we talked, and he said, I hope this is tea, but he also said, you know, I'm not here to arrest anyone. I'm just saying that you guys should not stay too long, but I won't arrest anybody. And he talked with the woman whose eyes were on the image, called Myra. And he said, you know, I have family on the other side. I understand. And with my colleagues up on the hill, we decided not to intervene today. And I said, but sir, can I share that video that we just did? And he said, yes, sure, you can share it. And I said, but you see, there's your name on your badge, and I don't want you to have any problem. He said, no, don't worry. You know, that's my problem. You can post it. So I said, well, give me your number. I'll call you later. I want to be sure you're okay with that. And I called him later, and he said, no, I told you, you can post it. And I posted that image, and it got seen millions of times online. And he got some problem for that, but also he, you know, it kind of showed him in his world who was for these kind of moments and who were against. But he took a stand that day. He retired a couple years after, but we remained friends. And when I opened this show here in Torino, he flew to Torino for the opening with 2 other border patrol. And they came here and they were here and going to the museum. And he was like, you know, I've never been to a museum opening. I don't even know if I'm allowed to come. I'm like, why would you should be allowed? They said, well, we don't know, you know, we don't know if this is allowed for us to be here. And I'm like, of course, what is this? What do you think it would be close to you? And it was very interesting to see how the biggest walls were within them, you know, like the biggest wall are within us. And so we really remain friends and we text so often. And he realized that now that he's retired, this moment that where he decided not to arrest us, sent such a strong message that sometimes the limits are not where we think they are. And in my work, this is where I spend most of the energy on, is try to find the limits. Where the society tells us limits are, I try to see how far and how deep are those limits. And so, thank you. Thanks. And so in this same field, there's another project another story I want to tell you about, which is, you know, in prison in America. This is a project that at first I didn't want to do, because you see, to do a project in prison, you need so many permits, you need so many authorization, it's so much paperwork, and we're too small of a team to do so much paperwork. And so one morning a friend of mine called me and said, hey JR, you know, how are you? I'm like, I'm good. And he said, you know, it would be so good if one day you do a project in a prison. And I was like, I know, I've tried before, trust me, it's too complicated. And he said, yeah, but you know, it would be incredible. And I said, I know, but you know, I won't do it. It's just too much. You don't realize the number of paperwork if I wanted to do something gigantic there. And then he said, well, but what would you do if you could do it? And I said, well, you know, if I could do it, I would paste the entire prison like I did the Louvre. I said that in a way that he don't call me back, you know. It was a way of saying, ciao, you know, just good luck with that. But he hung up the phone and he called a friend of his who works with prison. And the guy was like, oh, yeah, you spoke to JR? And he said, yeah, I spoke to JR. So what he said, no, he wants to do a project in prison. So the guy said, oh, great, let me call the governor. And he called the governor of California. This is 4 years ago. And the governor was like, wait, I'm sorry, who is this? Yeah, my name is Scott. I work with prisons. You know, we've met before at this thing and that thing. Yeah, but what can I do for you? Well, I'm trying to get this artist called JR to go in a prison. It's like, well, I'm not the right person. You should go to the office and this. And the guy said, yeah, but, you know, he's an artist from France. I said, I'm sorry, I don't know that artist. I can't help you. He said, well, but, you know, sometimes he do those murals and he records people's stories. And then the governor was like, wait, a couple years ago, I was in a mural with 1,300 people. And if you look, he's up there with the suit, leaning down, you know. And the governor was in the mural before he was a governor. And I recorded his story with all the other people. So he said, I remember this artist. Give him full clearance for any of the prison in California. So then they called me back the same morning. Thank you. And they say, you know, choose a prison. Apparently the governor will give you a permit. So I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, I don't know any prison. And so I look on Google Earth, and I look at prison, but all the prison, the yards, have grass on it, you know, but I'm a wallpaper guy. I need to paste on concrete. I cannot paste on grass. So I keep looking, and each time it's the same thing. I'm like, I can't do anything. I don't know, you know, it's grass or it's sand. How can I paste if there's, you know, such a floor? And at some point I see a prison that looks a bit different. And when I look closer, I see that the main yard here is in concrete. So I called back my friend and I said, look, what's this one? And he said, well, let me see, what's the location point? And I said, well, it's here. It looks like it's in the desert. He said, oh, this one is Tehachapi. But Tehachapi is a supermax security prison. And actually, it's one of the worst prisons in the country. It's in the top 5 of the most violent prison in America. And I said, well, you know, you told me I could choose any prison. I chose this one. I mean, I don't know what's Tehachapi. I just see concrete here. He said, okay, if you want to go, you can go. But it sounded too, I didn't really believe that they could get me such permit. So I called two friends of mine that walk with me a lot, and they're in Los Angeles. And I said, guys, can you go tomorrow to this place called Tehachapi and walk in the prison with your camera, with your drone, and do a little scouting? And they say, do you have a paper? And I said, no, I don't have any paper. They said, you want us to drive 3 hours in the desert to walk in front of a fortress and with no paper? I said, no, but send me your ID. I will WhatsApp it to my friend there, and hopefully, they'll hear about you. But if not, don't worry. If you lose your day, I'll pay your day anyway, but it's just, let's call it a day. I don't have to go there anyway. They say, okay. And then I don't hear from them. The next day they drive, and then I don't hear from them the whole day. And then at the end of the day, they come out of the prison, they call me, and they say, JR, it's crazy. We walk in there, and they let us do anything we wanted. Like the army is actually inside this prison. We say, we want to go on the roof. And they say, well, there's electric fences, but okay, we'll turn them off. You can go on the roof. Then they say, we want to fly a drone. They say, sure, fly a drone. But there was geofencing, so the drone couldn't fly. But the army there and the guards were like, you have full permit. You can do whatever you want. So they say, you got to come here. It's very strange. They didn't even search us when we walk in. So 2 days later, I flew in there. And when I arrived there, I arrived in a room full of inmates that they had gathered for me. And I sat around the table, and I started talking with them. And I told them that I had no idea that such a prison even exists in America. There's prisons where people are in cages outside. I saw that in movie. I'm sure you saw that in movie, but I didn't know it was real. That was actually something they do. I thought that was kind of an exaggeration of, And I spoke with all of them, and I said, look, to be honest, I don't know much about the prison. I know about prison, but I don't know about super max security prison. But this is what I do, and I show them the artwork that I do. I show them, like projects that I've done before, and I said, would you be up for doing a project here? I won't say that people were applauding or being super nice. Everybody was just very arm crossed and not even giving me a smile. But they say yes, but they say, what do you want to do? And I say, well, I feel like you guys are here trapped in a hole, but your victims are also trapped in a hole. But the guards that are around you are also trapped in that same hole. So I'd love to create a mural where all of you are in the same mural, and then you can click on every single one of you and hear the story of you, of the victims, of the guards. And the guards who were surrounding the perimeter said, no, we don't want to be part of this. It was a very, there's a strict line between inmates and guards. So I said, okay, we'll see that later. And then I asked those guys, and I said, if you being in these artworks that I'm about to do might offend someone outside, if you being in this artwork means that the victim outside might be offended that you're in this, if I were you, I would not participate. And 7 people stood up and left the room. But the other one stayed. And most of them were there for murder, but because of gangs, and so they were gang-related. A lot of them were in prison since they were kids because 15, 16 years old or 18 years old, because of the 3-strike law. It was a law that happened in California. If you do 3 minor crimes, like you steal a phone, you get into a fight, and then you steal 1 car, you go to jail for life. And this was a law that was there for quite some years under Clinton, and that did many damage because a lot of those people have never killed anyone, and yet they're in prison for life, and they're stuck in the system. They stopped that law after because they realized it was, it was too crazy. But a lot of them were still trapped in there. Or a lot of them came in for a sentence of 3-4 years, and then in prison they were enrolled into gangs and had to stay longer, and then, then ended up staying 10, 15, 20 years. So I photographed them one by one. And then I told them, look, the photo is important, but I need you to record your story, your audio. I want you to tell me not me actually, but this microphone that I will leave in this room, and you'll share your story like you share it to me, but knowing that I know nothing about this place. So you'll talk to someone in Italy, someone in France, in wherever, that have no idea who you are, where you grew up, what led you to be here, and what is this place. So some of those guys went in that room and they stayed there for 30, 40 minutes and they talked and they cried. They never had a chance to actually share their story. This is a prison where there's no art project, there's no movies being shown on weekends. It's just like super max security prison. There's not, the guards don't even talk to the inmates. And so after that, we printed all the faces. And we came back into the prison with all of the image printed. And I managed to actually meet some victims on the outside and also to involve 4 of the guards to be also in the mural. When we came back, we actually came with all the brushes and all the glue, and we started pasting the yard that I just showed you before and involving everybody. Remember, I have full permission, so they let me enter with a truck and get all the brush. The only thing, of course, they forbid to have knife or to have scissors. But they were recounting all the brush and things every 30 minutes. We had the countdown to make sure nothing have been lost because it could become a weapon. And so the pasting was the incredible part because people from different gangs, were pasting together. All the people in black are my team, and so we try to involve as much people as possible. But of course, this is a massive prison with 700 inmates, so we could only do it with a smaller group of 50, 60 people. But we brought also that day some of the victims from the outside to come in. Now the thing is, I thought this would take me 3 days, but literally in less than 1 day, we were going so fast that I had to ask them to slow down, because if not, they would send them back to their cell. What I really wanted, when we were almost done, it was to involve some guards. And so at the very end, we finally managed to have some guards in to come and paste. And you have to understand, in a prison like that, this is almost impossible, because you see the guards normally, they stay in the watchtower over there. And they don't go down on the yard. The only moment they go down on the yard is when everybody is laid down on the floor with their arms like that. So they don't have connection with the inmates. And so when they came to paste and had to actually paste together, they were actually talking about, oh, well, sir, watch out, if you put the glue first, then it's better for the ink, and then if you do like this, then it would connect better. They would actually talk about very simple things, which is the process of building that image. And because of those moments, interaction happened. There's a little video also where you see them paste together. To me, it's almost like if we did all this for that very moment, that very little part we kept at the end, so they could paste together. The inmates could not believe it because they never had such proximity with the guards. But while I was doing it, I had my phone. They hadn't taken my phone away. So I had my phone with data on it, which means that I could photograph or film anyone and share it on social media. So for example, I take a photo of that guy, and then his family replied and said, oh, we know him. That's, that's my husband, or that's my father. And then he said, oh, my family replied, well, tell them I want to show them my diploma. And then, the next story, he actually wanted to share his diploma. Then I met this guy, and he had this huge swastika on his face. And when I saw him, I said, oh, wow, why did you do this? And he almost went like, oh, I did this a long time ago, but now I'm stuck with it. You can't remove tattoos in prison. But if I could, I would just remove it. And I posted it, and I wrote, I met this guy, and, if he could, he would remove his tattoo. And of course, you can imagine on social media, many people said, how can you post someone with a swastika? So I went back to him, and I said, hey, Kevin, there's something called social media. Do you know about it? And I said, how many years you've been here? He's like, 17. I said, well, it's a new thing then, and people saw your photo and someone in Italy, in France, in wherever, they can reply and speak to you. So I'm going to read you the comment of those people. But they're not nice comment, but you have to know how much it affects people. And he said, oh, okay, wow. And so he read them and he was really like, oh, wow. I mean, I never realized, you know, because in here it's so segregated that I did it in prison. And of course I went in this whole ideology of hating others, but then at some point I realized I was going nowhere. And after years in gangs, I decided to drop out the gang, but I'm still stuck with my tattoos. I said, okay, wait, but do you mind if I film this and we post that so that people could hear you? And we started doing videos, and I would question him, and then you would reply, and he would have to reply again. And I made him reply to every comment, every story. And it was amazing because it was the first time, even if you paste a little heart, if you posted a little heart to say, hey, love to you, Kevin, I know you're a good person, I would read that to him, and the impact it would have on him would be huge. He was like, oh, that person really meant that to me? And I said, yeah. Somehow they believe you. And they believe you that if you could remove it. And many people are actually offering to help to removing. People want to send you money to remove it. And so during that time and during that process, all of this happened. But the most incredible part is at the end of that whole day, and we sent a drone, and they had never seen a drone. Because the image, you can only see it from above. So this was really the end of the day when we had finished the pasting. And from up there, you could start seeing the piece. But then when you look at the photo, that's what you see. And the photo is actually still the same courtyard. And as you can see, they're walking on it. This is an illusion, but it's a basketball playground. You can still see the table. And then if you go deeper, you'll see the basketball playground here and the guys working on it. And in there, you have the guards, you have the inmates. And then we started and we made an app. And on that app, if you click on anyone, you'd have their whole audio and their whole story. So 2 or 3 months later, I managed to go back there. I had to find an idea to go back there to talk to those guys. So I said, oh, you know, I wrote to the administration, I need to finish my project, I need to do this. And I came back and I say, I want to do a pasting on the wall this time. And they say, well, you can paste the wall, but you cannot let the inmate goes on the top floors. You know, they have to remain down. So we managed to get a scaffolding in, and then from a distance, that's what it looked. I photographed the mountain behind so that the wall disappeared. But they haven't let me paste the bottom of it because the guards are not in the yard. They only see them from watchtowers. They need to always have a clear view on them. So they cannot be with the background of an image. They always need to be detached from the wall. They have to be dressed on the same color, because often they shoot at them from the watchtower before entering into the yard. And so I went and talked to those guys, and I say, so what happened since the project? And they say, oh, you don't know? And I said, no, what was the impact? They say, well, you know, first of all, my daughter never visited me in 17 years. But she stayed in her bedroom and she listened to my story for 40 minutes. And then she visits me every week now. And she said, if you ask any of us, that's what happened, is we reconnected with our family. But also the guards started to listen to our story. And now they say hello to us when we walk in the hallway. And so communication started to happen. And they say a lot of us have been moved to level 3. This was level 4, it's a maximum. They say we've been moved to level 3, which means we have more ability to go outside than before inside the prison. And so that moment for them of the change that happened inside was already 2-3 months after something insane. And a year later, we kept coming back every 3-4 months. Kevin was about to get out. And it was incredible because this was right after COVID. It even took more than that, 2 years later. And that was his last day. That's the day he came out. And on the day he came out, or the day before, actually, we gave him the book of Maus, you know, about the Holocaust. And actual Art Spiegelman, the artist who made it, whose family died in the Holocaust, signed it for him. and say, Kevin, I know you're better than this. And I forgot what he said, but he said something very nice to him. And Kevin read it that night before he got out. And the next morning when we spoke to him, he said, I called my mother last night and I told her about this book that moved me. And she said, but you stupid moron, your grandfather's brother died in Auschwitz because they were hiding Jews during the war. And you go in prison and put this on your face. And when he came out, we went there to welcome him, actually. And the first thing he wanted to do was to remove the tattoo. And when he was outside, I don't know if I have, that was his last day, actually. We went up the hill so that he looked at the prison from on top of the mountain that he looked at for all those years, and finally got the other point of view of it. And at the end of the removal, it takes a few sessions, but the doctor looked at him and said, well, who's better than a Jewish doctor to remove your tattoo? Now, over the time, what happened, is now it's been 4 years, half of the inmates you see in this image have been freed, totally free. And I never thought that a project, an art project could have so much impact, but it's actually the first time that we could really measure it, because we did it inside a prison that is totally closed in the middle of the desert, so you know who gets in and who gets out. And even people that had life without parole got freed after that. And the reason why is because even if you change, like for example, a guy like Kevin, he have changed, but no one is there to notice it. No one, a lot of those guys had actually changed, but in a prison like that, no one will ever notice if you change, even after 20 years. And so what happened is, every year or two, they go to board, like they pass in front of a commission, and they ask the guards to write a letter that says that they noticed that they've changed. And because of that, and because of them now knowing the guards, and because of them being noticed, the board say, oh, wow, you really did change. And they freed them. They say, you don't need to spend another 40 years here. For what? And so half of the inmates we had in the group got freed. And there's more coming out every 6 months or a year. And so that's really one of the first times that I could measure, but also understand that the power in the project was in the interaction it created inside it. And that's really what's at the core of all my work. So that's why I wanted to tell you those two stories. Thank you. Thank you. We still have time, so if you have any question, I left some time so that we can, talk. And if you want me to do everything again in Italian, then, I'll start again. Just for you. So anyone have a question? Everyone's very shy. Yes. Ah, you have a mic, I think.
En français, c'est possible?
Oui, I'll translate for you.
Merci. Je voulais savoir votre prochain gros projet, peut-être risqué, entre guillemets, avec une aussi grosse portée que ces derniers que vous nous avez présentés.
So she asked me what's my next project with this kind of scale. The truth is, I never know exactly what's my next, because when I start into a project, even this one, I started, I spoke on a Tuesday, on the Saturday I started in the prison. I always leave room for that. So I always have projects or exhibition like this, but at the meantime, I'm working on different projects, or I'm scouting, or I'm observing, so that projects like that could happen. But I also spend a lot of time going back into the same places to continue the projects. So in the prison, I go every year. In the favela in Brazil, I go twice a year. And all of those places where I started the link with the community, I keep on going. So, it's hard. It's a hard answer for me, because I never know. And I like not knowing. Yes. They're bringing you the mic, yeah.
Thank you. I was just wondering, is for you, art is always some kind of rebellion?
I don't think, I started doing graffiti, writing my name on walls, but I don't know if it was a rebellion. It was more a way to exist, you know. You grew up in small apartments, in big projects, and you just want to be seen. I think that's just, that's just a very human thing to just write your name on wall. But then after, I didn't do all this thing illegally because I wanted it to be illegally. I did them because in a lot of those places, I didn't have any other choice than to do it illegally. In the Middle East, I couldn't ask the permission of the authority. They would have never given it to me. At the border of Mexico, I could not because it's easier for them to close their eyes than to sign a paper. So I realized in all of those processes that it's not really a rebellion. It's often the only thing that's possible. And to be honest, each time I ask the community if they're okay to participate. So in my head, I'm doing a mini referendum that if all of you here, and I ask each one of you, are okay for me to paste on your wall, because this is not my wall, this is your wall, then I'll do it. But it's your wall, so you're going to help me do it. And the truth is, if one person says, no, I don't want, this should not be here, then of course we're going to have a whole conversation, because, we still have to include that person who's against it. So, the fact that I don't have permit doesn't always make it more easy. It creates more conversation. More conversations means in community we sit, we talk, people ask me what's the purpose. Each of those places, even in the favela, the drug dealers say, what's the purpose of it? What's the point? What is the purpose of this? And it's a very deep question, because how do you answer that? Art doesn't have a direct purpose. When the prisoner, I walked there the first day, they say this, they say, hey, what is this going to change? I can't be there and say, well, I'm going to free half of you in 3 years. I just say I have no idea what it's going to do. To be honest, we're just going to try it, and it might do nothing, but I guess we have to try, and we have nothing to lose in trying. And so in all of my project, there is that part, that there's a part of it that is unknown, and there's a big part of it that could fail more than it could succeed. But if it works, then it's a big step forward, onward. I don't know, yeah. In front. But if it doesn't work, then if I got arrested at the border, you'd be like, yeah, of course you go to the border. What do you expect, So there is always that line that I'm looking for the limits, but sometimes I'm reminded of where the limits are. Yes. Sorry. There was. Yes.
How it work, your creativity process, and when you get the idea, in which moment, and when you understand, wow, I want to do that?
It's a very strange thing. I don't really know. It's just often through conversations with people. So sometimes I go one place and I don't have exactly the idea. Sometimes I also have a really bad idea. But by talking with people, the idea becomes more precise and it makes more sense. And sometimes it just doesn't, and I don't do it. But there's always like a brief of an idea. Sometimes I will even go and try, even if the idea is not completed, just because I feel I need to do it. So in a couple of weeks, I'm going in the middle of the mountains in Turkey to try something, but I'm not even sure it's going to work. And I might, I just want to try it. And there's always a lot of that process that's in part, and often the idea might change last minute, and I always keep that as a possibility. It's almost like freedom for me to be able to change. That's why I don't work with administrations or brands, or I don't do commissions like this, because this way I have the freedom. I don't have to answer to anyone, and I can just be free to change or to switch totally a project if I want to. Merci. Yes.
Sorry. I worked as a teacher in Scotland in a very rural place where my pupils really didn't care about art. And for me, art is really important to maybe change our reality. I really feel that your work is like that. But how would you convince younger generation to, I don't know, be more interested and be more creative, especially with the relationship we have with phones, etc.?
So, with can you say the last part of your question with the, especially with the?
So with the kids that feel a little bit less creative
Yeah.
and less interested because maybe they don't see the purpose in their own world of this, of art.
Yeah. So look, I was that kid, you know, so I think art almost did that trick on me that at first for me it was just fun to go and write my name in tunnels or climb that building and just leave a mark. There was never any intention of it to be part of any art world or just because I didn't know. So in my work, I try to always have that as part of the process. So to answer your question, I always do a project, and for example, here when we did in Torino, you know, when everybody carried the image, of course, I know that most of the people come because they're gonna, you know, it's a beautiful day, they're gonna carry an image, it's a cool thing to post on social media, but maybe on the day they'll realize, oh wait, why am I carrying? What is this project? Who are those kids? Why am I carrying this kid? Then on the actual moment, they realize more than what they have thought about what the project is, you know, because from the day to the next, 1,500 people showed up. Of course, some know my work, but some don't. They just come because they're friend of someone. They just heard there's something happening on the main square. Then they'll get sensibilized to that issue. And I believe, actually, there's a great moment to involve kids or people that would not necessarily work this way. So if you wanted tomorrow to do a project at your school, and that's what we do all the time with schools, I started a project called Inside Out, which means that, of course, there's very little chance that I come in your school and that I do it. So what I started to do, I was like, okay, wait, actually, if this is your wall and this is your community, why do you need me to do it? You know, why me from France would come here and do something here that you could do by yourself? And so I started a project in 2011 where I say, whoever send me their portraits, I'll print them and I'll ship them for free wherever you are. And you paste them, you know, wherever it makes sense for you. You don't even need to credit me, or you don't even need to credit the project. You don't even have to paste them. It's just based on trust. And now we've sent more than 500,000 posters around the world. So what it does, I'll tell you, because the last couple of years we really focus on school. And so most of the team that we have based on that is really dedicated to that. So a teacher sends us the photos of the kids. So what you do is just, you know, take your phone and you photograph each kid on a white background, or we can send you a background. And then you have to ask the parents, so, you know, they all come home, they sign the little paper. You send us the 20 photos, 50 photos, depending how many kids you involve. We will print them, we'll send you a big tube with all the posters. When you receive that, you're gonna unroll them in the middle of the class. Right away, that kids know art or not art, they're gonna see themselves, they're gonna see each of them. The magic of seeing yourself enlarged is one thing. And then the next step is what's very important, is you're gonna find a wall, you're gonna say, you're gonna talk to the head of the school, can we paste in the courtyard, or can we paste outside? And then they'll say, oh, maybe we'll do it in the courtyard, maybe we'll invite the parents one day, whatever. You'll start making glue, so the kids can help making the glue. And then you'll start pasting, and the kids, it's easy. Anyone can paste. A 5 years old can paste. You put the glue on the wall and the poster attach itself. It doesn't need to be well made, just need to hang. And slowly, all those faces appear, and the kids start playing with it, interacting, and say, oh wait, we could actually paint them this color. We could actually switch them. We could cut the faces and interpose the faces together. Suddenly, this project, without even them thinking I have to be creative, they're being creative. So now this project, we're doing it constantly, you know, and so school is what we really focused on. But in the meantime, there are people in Ukraine, there are people in Tunisia during the revolution who send us the same portraits of adults, of young people, who are using it to fight for their rights. And for me, this is very important, because if in one place it's used to, you know, bring art into schools and communities, in some others, people are fighting for democracy with it. In some other place, like in Switzerland, some elderly people are pasting their photos in their village to remind the locals that they exist, you know. To me, it's really fascinating how the power of an image, when it's done within a community, which means that it's not one kid doing his photo, it's actually a group of kids, And that's really, we changed the rule on the project, because it used to be that we print one by one. So if you order your photo and we send it to you, then by yourself, you might not go in the street and paste it. But if suddenly you're with 20 of your friends or 40 of your friends, everyone will push each other so that this happen. And so you go through the same process that I went in the prison, because you'll have to find a wall, you have to negotiate with the, and all those interactions will actually be what you'll remember at the end. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. And I hope you'll do it. Yeah, it's easy actually, it's just like those kids will not come up with it, and it's always that one person that comes and say, hey, we're gonna do this, or hey, we could do that, and that starts a project. And we've seen it, and I have a map that I put in all my exhibition of all the places where Inside Out had arrived, and each time we see a country or a city where it never happened, we ask, hey, who knows someone in that, because it always needs that one person that brings it. And then people are like, wait, why didn't we do this? It's so easy. We can just send our photo and get them back. And I think that's the nature of the project. I don't do press about it. It's just word of mouth. But then slowly, it's crossing borders like that. Thank you.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Here. Oh, sorry.
Here.
Here.
Remember, I have dark glasses.
Yeah.
I'm in the dark here,
Have you ever had to leave a project halfway due to dangerous situations and come back after a long time, maybe changing the focus on that project?
Yeah. I've been arrested many times. And so that's why I was not also that excited to go back in prison, there. But the thing is, it's just paper and glue, Sometimes they evict me, sometimes they send me back, sometimes they just give me a fine. And often, like in Turkey, years ago, I've been arrested a few times by pasting, but we kept on doing it, we kept on pasting. And it was a very long process, but sometimes when I'm within the project, I just try to be a bit smarter on how to do it. And then sometime, yes, I went to North Korea, I was in the country, but I realized that it was impossible to do anything. And then I left after a week, It's not always possible. They do our limits, but I remember before 2008, I went in the favelas around 2004 or 5, and I couldn't see how to walk in such a violent community. I just couldn't see. And 3 years later, it hit me. That was there was another way to do it. So yes, sometimes projects takes time. The border of Mexico, I had seen it before, but it took me years before realizing, oh, that's another way to do it, So each time there's a new development into my techniques of using photography, then it just opened totally. Like here, this is in Mauritania, and we showed up in the middle of the desert at the border with Mali, where there's, right now there's many kidnappings and stuff. But we could do that very quick without being, intercept, and do that with the community. Same in Ukraine, we could enter in the war, do it, and come out. Because of those big banners. But I was not doing big banners, 3-4 years ago. So each time is a process, but it comes because of the desire of involving people in it. Thank you. I think we cleared it, right? Wow. I answered all your questions. Yes, the French. You want to sit in front? I'll translate for you. Oui.
Voilà, ce sera plus simple.
Ouais.
Vous aviez parlé d'une équipe, je voulais savoir à peu près combien de personnes la composaient et est-ce qu'il y avait eu des soucis, par exemple, pendant la prison? J'ai vu qu'il y avait des femmes qui travaillaient avec vous. Est-ce que ça a été un élément dérangeant ou pas?
So she asked me if, I talk about team, how big is my team? And for example, in the prison, you see that there are women in my team. And so was it complicated for them to enter into the prison? So we're about 35 people now in the team. And I try to not be bigger than that because, I also work in self-financing. So, when you remove brand outside of the equation, when you remove, states, and so it's only the sales of artworks that finance, we have to be very careful into how we finance the projects and how to maintain the studio. But there are women, of course, in my team, and so when we do projects like that, like for every place, everyone decides if they want to go in one place. And here it was the team from New York that came, and there was a few women that came in the group. And actually, they'll tell you, they became great friends with some of them. You know, Luana that you see appearing in that image, I think she is, you know, in touch with Kevin, the guy with the swastika now, all the time. He came even to visit us in New York. And she came many times because she was in charge of the production of the whole project in there. And she never had any issue. Maybe it's luck, maybe it's this, but to be honest, we were all, of course, you know, having an eye, but there was a big respect. I think the power of the project and the inmates realizing that this never happened and might never happen again. I don't think, you know, it had never been a situation where there was like a tension towards any of us. The prison was more afraid that anything could become a weapon. And so many times, even if there was a fight on another yard that we're not in, everybody had to be on the ground on the entire prison, which means thousands of inmates over different yards, on the ground, even if it's a matter that is not happening where you are. And the weirdest thing is that they always tell us, don't get on the ground. So you're there, you're talking to someone, and suddenly, boom, he's on the ground, and you're standing because suddenly they have weapons pointing at everybody, and they want to know who is who. And that's why we couldn't be dressed the same color. So often you in these very weird situations where, you know, you just had a conversation, you're feeling a bit of humanity back inside again, and then suddenly, you know, you're reminded of the context and what is happening. We're making a documentary now that is finished. It's going to come out later this year about Tehachapi, about that prison project. And so if you're in France, there's a section of that that's on Canal Plus called Papier École, Paper and Glue. It's a documentary that came out in the US, and I know in France they have it on Canal Plus, and you'll see a bit of the prison in there. Sorry? Yeah, so on the last time we went, I think it was the last time, we did Inside Out. So we bring a photo booth truck, people could take their photo and paste it. And a good friend of mine, she's a ballerina from New York City Ballet. When I choreographed ballet there, she was dancing. And then over the years, we remained friends. She came and helped on many projects. And we invited her to come. But I had asked the prison, can she come with her, you know, tutu and dance? They said, no, none of that here. I'm sorry, that's like the limit. I was like, okay. And we still put her on the team, but we told her, put the tutu in a bag, but don't. At the end of the day, after she actually danced, and you can see some of those stories on my Instagram because I keep some of those from that time, but she was dressed not in a tutu, but we were with a large group of inmates, a Latino gang, you know, tattooed the whole face and everything, and she started giving them ballet classes. And one, for fun, started following the move and tried to do it just to laugh, you know, but then all the others said, no, I can do it better. And then suddenly she's running a little class in the middle of the yard. Suddenly she said, no, you come and you carry me and I'll do this jump. So the guy is there and I have to carry her and like jumping like that. And then the guard say, well, I can do better than this. And he come and suddenly there was this beautiful moment. Then every 2 hours, everybody have to be back in their cell for counting. So suddenly the whole prison is empty for 30 minutes. And we were outside and I was like, I go see one of the head of the guard and I said, look, I know we have 30 minutes now. What if she puts on the tutu and she dances in the middle of the prison? No one will ever know it. Maybe it never happened because everyone's inside. No one will actually see it. And he was like, ah, fuck you. And he said, okay, just, you know, just do it quick. And he, you know, she got dressed and she danced in the middle of all the yard and it was beautiful. Like it was the end of the day. We filmed that. And then right before anyone else came out, she had been dressed back and it's like it never happened. And so there are those beautiful moments. They can only happen because of someone closing their eyes at a very moment. And strangely, it kind of becomes that official. One day the image, you know, I share it and stuff, but a lot of my work is based on that. So at some point, the repetition of many people closing their eyes, willing to send a powerful message, is so strong, it's so big that it's, to me, it's giving me a lot of hope. You know. I think we, I tired you guys. One last question? Yes?
Do you have a favorite work? Do you? Oh,
I don't really have a favorite because if you look, every walk have led to the next one and to the next one. So they're all the continuity of, you know, like the process of me. Instead of walking in a studio, you see my process outside. So you notice, you know, every step of it. But there's no, of course, a project like the prison helped me understand better, you know, the DNA of what I'm doing. But I don't have a favorite, but there are projects that I keep following, of course. Exactly, every walk is a piece of a giant puzzle. Exactly, because they're all linked. Those eyes that you see here that we just did last year in Mauritania are linked to the favela 15 years before because the houses was horizontal. Each time it's a bit of logic that suddenly, and then the prison is the sum of all of it that helped me understand what is actually the most important part, which is the process, because pasting the yard would be so much easier to print a giant banner and put 4, you know, like hammer on each side to hold the banner on the floor. No one would help, and the image would actually be sharper than this. But the fact of pasting hundreds and hundreds of pieces of puzzle forced everyone to come together and do it, and that's why I keep, you know, that part of the complicated part of the project, because I know that the answer is there. It's not in simplifying or making the quality nicer. It's really into how to involve more people. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Merci.